me ask you something. Are you afraid of the ocean? No, of course not. What's there to be afraid of? You know, besides the dark expanse of endless void stretching downwards just as far as our tallest mountains stretch upwards. Of course, I'm being a bit facetious. I think it's right to be afraid of it. I know I am. Waves which tear man's greatest vessels in twain. Darkness which makes moonlight seem like the sun. A healthy fear is necessary, as all mortal men should have of the unknown and what might lurk beneath the surface of the waters. When I set out to collect all 40 of Dredge's achievements, I kept this fear in the forefront of my mind, ever present, and it did not steer my course wrong, though I met with some rather odd individuals, found myself in lands stranger than fiction, alone and unwelcome, and even had a few brushes with the fair sea herself, both parts of her, the beautiful side and the, less so. If you are interested in this tale, I'd happily tell it to you. Ah, right. I figured you might be. Well, in that case, gather close and I'll tell you the tale of Dredge. I begin my journey as all such voyages must, looking for work. Suddenly, I find myself crashing against the hidden rocks of the coastline. A grand lighthouse above me. When I awake, I behold a homely town, and who else but the mayor of this town comes out to speak to me. This, it turns out, is Greater Marrow, the center of trade, economy, and high living in the world of Dredge, although I wouldn't say it's a particularly high form of living. Anyways, the mayor is happy to see me as the town has been in need of a new fisherman for some time, and I'm it. He leaves me be to take a quick cruise around the wharf, although he gives me special warning to make it back before the sun is down. The controls are about what you would expect, no surprises there, and as I practice I notice and approach a small group of bubbles floating to the surface of the water. This, I am told, is a fishing spot. I begin fishing and a little minigame appears. Click on time with the green bars to reel in quicker, something which is highly desirable since every moment spent fishing is another hour lost as the time ticks by. I place my first catches, blue mackerel, in my hull. Eventually I deplete the fishing spot, and so it is on to another. With night approaching, it becomes harder to see. Luckily, I have a light. I hold down E to select my lights, which I turn on, but I also notice a foghorn and a spyglass. Equipping the foghorn, I give it a try. Then, I try out the spyglass, but during this, my foghorn's echo returns to me, granting me my first achievement, from the fog. Heading back to Greater Marrow, I make one more stop to catch a nightfish I hadn't seen before, an arrow squid. Placing this in my cargo hold grants me yet another achievement, perfect packing, for having a fully loaded cargo. I'd call that a successful first day. Back in town, I am once again greeted by the mayor. He's happy with how I am getting along, but sadly informs me that my old wrecked ship is beyond hope. However, luckily, the ship I am currently captaining is without a fisherman, and he is happy to let me purchase it and work it off, sell some fish and repay the loan. I take him up on his offer. Docked in town, I take a moment to review my options. Firstly, I notice that I have a storage locker. Here I can transfer items for future use. Next is my cabin. Here I find a few options. A pursuits tab lists my current pursuits. The only one I currently have is one to sell my fish to the local fishmonger, a horrible name for a profession. Also here is a map. I notice that I am currently located dead center in a place called the Marrows. Around the Marrows lie 4 other lands: Gale Cliffs, Stellar Basin, Twisted Strand, and Devil's Spine. Eventually, I figure, I will be making my way to each one in turn. On the map I can mark notable locations with pins. Also I notice a few black dots around. These, it turns out, are places where I may dock and rest. Very helpful. Next is my messages. Currently, I have no messages or notes, but I do observe the counter by my messages, which reads 0 out of 10. It looks like I ought to keep my eyes peeled for these. Lastly is the encyclopedia. Here I discover plenty of information about each of the fish which I have caught, including a description, whether or not they can be caught by day, by night, or both, the method of catching, where they can be caught, and other information. I also notice there are versions of each fish called aberrations, which I've not yet run into. Something to look forward to, I suppose. Back in town, I visit the fishmonger, who, I'll just say, fits his profession well enough. He tells me vague things about the last fisherman and explains that he buys the fish I catch. Works for me. Opening up my boat's storage, I sell all my fish to him. Exiting his shop, I run into the mayor again. This time, he gives me something he found, a research part. I'll put this to good use soon enough. He also mentions the local shipwright, who I should probably pay a visit to. Doing just that, I am greeted by the shipwright. Having made my introductions, I am gifted an achievement, aptly named Introductions. The shipwright informs me that she can make improvements to my vessel. Also, she can install new parts and repair damage to my hull caused by rocks or anything else. Suspiciously stated, madam. In her shop, I discover 4 things which I can purchase. New rods, which allow me to catch new fish or the same fish faster. Engines, which increase my sailing speed. Trawl nets, which catch fish passively. And lights for the dark nights and dark places. I decide to purchase a simple skimmer, allowing me to catch fish in shallow waters. I also quickly learn how the system works. I'm able to research new equipment using research parts like the one the mayor gifted me. This allows me to purchase new and improved equipment from the shipwright. I spend my part researching an improved engine, but unfortunately I lack the funds to purchase it just yet. I decide to sleep until morning. A new day dawning, I make some friendly conversation with the mayor, who tells me a little bit about the last fisherman, a man who is apparently quite unreliable, leaving for long periods of time and returning very late. Apparently, one day, he left and never returned. Well, I suppose the bar hasn't been set too high then. I decide to head out to catch some more fish. Across the bay, I find a new town, Little Marrow. Here I strike up a conversation with the local dock worker. He seems to enjoy his simple life. I also enter the shop of the town's trader. This odd individual seems interested in buying any special trinkets I may encounter in my journeys. I have none for now, so I take my leave. On my way back to Greater Marrow, it suddenly becomes dark, and I begin to panic. That's what this eye up here indicates, my level of panic. Luckily, light or rest will dispel it, although I don't yet understand the dangers panic may bring. In town, I visit the fishmonger again, who gives me a special order. Fortunately, I happen to already have the fish he is requesting on hand. I turn them in and receive some extra money in return, and another order. This time I have one of the fish, but I am missing the 2 squids he needs. I sell the remainder of my fish and make a quick stop at the mayor's to pay off my debt to the town. With this, a new area is available to me, the dry docks. Here I can make significant improvements to my vessel. This means extra space, more attachments, and superior hulls. In order to complete these upgrades, I need materials, namely lumber, scrap, and cloth. These, I'm told, I will find out in the sea, each upgrade requiring different amounts of each. I decide to sleep until morning, and upon awakening I am greeted by a strange old woman coming from the lighthouse. She tells me, essentially, to go away if I know what's good for me. Odd. I make a quick stop by the mayor's office, who just so happens to have a package for the dock worker in Little Marrow, the town I visited before. I check this in my pursuits and find it listed there, along with my mission to catch the fish for the fishmonger. I head out once again. Back in Little Marrow, I deliver the package. The dock worker opens it, hiding its contents from my view, contents he describes as fresh. For my payment, I am given a bit of money, as well as an old book he has no use for. Checking my cabin, I discover the book there. Here I can equip the book, reading it passively as I sail the oceans, and, after some time, I will have read the book and my skills will improve. 3% faster sailing speed or 10% resistance to panic. Stuff like that. Done in Little Marrow, I fill up my hull once again and head back to the fishmonger. I give him the squid he requested and he gives me some extra money in return. He also tells me about a new item which will help me catch the crustaceans required for his next order, crab pots. Having an extra on hand, he gifts it to me. Also, I am now able to buy more of these from him, and I take the opportunity to purchase a second one. He also mentions a strange red light at night, something I had indeed noticed. More on that soon. The crab pots work straightforwardly. Drop them in the water and come back in a day or two to retrieve the hull. After a while, they must be repaired by the shipwright. While here, I also decide to purchase a second engine with my money, greatly increasing my speed. Heading out in the night, a glowing object catches my eye. Heading over towards it, I find a message in a bottle with a date. Opening my messages tab in my cabin, I read it over, a story of a wife and a husband sailing around Greater Marrow on their honeymoon. This man, it seems, was a sailor, and, wanting to rename his boat, he threw out all items with the boat's old name on it before performing a renaming ceremony. However, his wife, not thinking anything of his superstition, kept a memento with the ship's old name on it, potentially disrupting the renaming ceremony. It appears she did not tell him of this, and, perhaps, I, reading this letter, am now the only one who knows about this unfortunate event. Pondering these things, I head to Little Marrow to sleep until daylight. The next day is filled with lots of fishing. I also stop by my crab pots to retrieve my catch, comprised of a rather hardy-looking crab called a fiddler crab, and a much smaller common crab. Back at the fishmonger's, I give him the crabs he requested, completing the third order. While selling my other fish, he informs me that some schools of fish contain what he calls abnormal specimens, and that I might be able to ferret out which schools have these just by looking at the water's surface. This is probably related to those aberration spots I noticed in my encyclopedia. I also make a quick stop by the shipwrights to pick up an improved light to keep the darkness at bay, for a time at least. With nothing else to do, I decide to set sail south of my little alcove to a new location I spotted on my map where there seems to be a large house. I quickly dock here and approach the ruined mansion. However, its doors are locked. My map calls this place Blackstone Isle, and it appears there is nothing much to do here for the time being. I make my way to a similar location north of the two towns. Here I find a place called Steel Point, with nothing at all to do. On my way back to Greater Marrow, I decide to check my crab pots. Unfortunately, something horrid seems to have snuck its way inside. A cerebral crab, a deformed version of the regular common crab. I add it to my inventory, and I am given a pursuit to talk to the fishmonger. This is my first aberration. Taking it to the fishmonger, he seems happy to be given such a specimen. Placing his fingers on it, he pushes on its insides and then slices it open, removing a small handkerchief from its entrails. This I am given. You know, common courtesy dictates that I should say thank you for the gift, but I just don't think I can bring myself to do so in this particular case. Either way, the fishmonger tells me he'll pay a premium for similar aberrations in the future. Leaving his shop, I notice a peculiar man spying on me through a window. He seems to know about the aberration I just sold, and the handkerchief, an object he wishes to inspect. But not here. He wants me to visit him on Blackstone Isle for a business proposition. Hey, I was just there! Where were you 5 minutes ago? You only answer the door for guys with handkerchiefs? That's an odd way to do business. Either way, I make my way back there, but not before noticing another message in the water. This one dated 1 day after the last. Apparently my assumption was correct. The renamed ship appears to have been cursed with bad luck, likely as a result of the failed ceremony. According to the letter, the couple ran into some shallow rocks and lost a few items the day after the last letter, and the man wasn't too happy about this either. On Blackstone Isle, I find the strange man holding an old crimson book. He introduces himself as a collector of strange items, including the one I have in my possession. I give the handkerchief to him, and he studies it. This, it appears, came from a ship which sunk long ago, with a great many important items on board, including this handkerchief. The collector wants these items from this wreck. In order to obtain them, he proposes this. He will outfit my ship with the ability to dredge the wrecks and dark depths for items, and, in return, I am to bring the special items from the one particular wreck back to him. My reward for accomplishing this task will be something beyond all imagining. With an eerie feeling in the back of my mind, I accept his proposition. After installing the necessary equipment, he informs me what I am looking for. A ring, a necklace, a watch, a music box, and a key. One for each location. Sailing away from Blackstone Isle, I quickly locate a spot for dredging. I initiate the small game which requires me to keep the arrow from running into the gaps by switching back and forth between the inner and outer ring. Once done, I am rewarded with an item, in this case a worn gold ring. Minding my own business, fishing up some squid, I pull up another aberration from the depths, a brood squid, a horrible deformation of a regular squid, with a gelatinous sac in its glowing core. Back in Greater Marrow, the mayor informs me to keep my eyes peeled for a photographer south somewhere. Duly noted. Back in town, I notice two new people to talk to. First is the lighthouse keeper, whose acquaintance I made earlier. In search now of those relics, I decide to ask her about any known shipwrecks. She does, in fact, know of one around the back of Greater Marrow, where I spotted that red light during the twilight hours. I'm willing to bet the light is the marker for what I seek. Second is the builder, a capable-looking woman who seems packed and ready to go. Indeed, upon striking up a conversation, it seems leaving this place is exactly what she wishes to do. She has her eyes set on Steel Point, the island to the north I visited earlier, and she asked me to help with the materials. 2 lumber and 2 scrap would be all it would take. If I could find any, I could stack it up there for her. I decide to help her out, and I am given a new pursuit. Talking to the mayor, I ask him of any strange occurrences that might have happened recently. He tells me of one such event, although it wasn't altogether recent. The mayor of Little Marrow, it appears, went insane quite suddenly. And then, one day, he disappeared, never to be seen again. Such tales seem, to me, to be more common than not around these waters. Making one final stop by the fishmonger, it turns out that he has one last request of me. Some fish, as he is sure I've noticed, develop odd deformities. This time he is after one of these, and he hints that someone might desire a taste of such a creature. Gross. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, I happen to have one on hand. I turn in the brood squid I just caught moments before. He takes it happily and pays me, also rewarding me with a couple of research parts for my efforts. I add them to my inventory. I decide to use my newly acquired research parts to research a new rod. This one allows me to catch both coastal and shallow fish, something I can already do, but now I can do so with a single rod instead of 2, saving me inventory space. I sell my other 2 rods and purchase my newly researched one, installing it in my ship. Done with all my tasks, I decide to head to the red light, oblivious to the danger. I make my way around the island in the dark night and make a stop to dredge up some materials. Before I can move, I am attacked and my hull is injured. I straggle back to Greater Marrow at a reduced speed due to the damage to my engines. Back in town, I visit the shipwright, who tells me my boat is looking a bit banged up. You don't say. But I don't have enough money to pay her since I just bought a fancy new rod. Great. And since I gave him the aberration, the fishmonger is closed. I decide to head to Little Marrow to sell the gold ring I found earlier. On the way there, I noticed a fish pool with a strange bluish-green glow radiating from the water. This, I surmise, must be what the fishmonger meant when he said aberrations can be seen from the surface. Sure enough, while fishing here, I pull up another aberration. Well, at least he seems happy. He's got a big smile after all. That makes one of us. Docking in Little Marrow, I notice a new person to talk to. A grieving father. Alright, I guess I can talk to him. I ask him about shipwrecks. I ask the grieving father about shipwrecks. Why would I do that? And of course, yes, he knows of one. His only son was lost at sea years ago, his body out there somewhere in one of the local wrecks. Apparently, there are many such wrecks around. This place just gets better and better. Of course, noticing my ship's dredging capabilities, he asked me to try and retrieve some of his late son's mementos, if at all possible, specifically a bronze belt buckle. Of course, I cannot deny such a request. Before I leave, I ask him about strange occurrences, and he tells me a bit more about the old crazy mayor. Apparently, before disappearing, he was crying out to throw it back. However, what exactly he was trying to return to the sea, presumably what might have caused his madness in the first place, isn't entirely clear. Next, talking to the dock worker, I inquire about Blackstone Isle. Interestingly, he informs me that the island doesn't even have a shipping address. As far as he knows, no one lives there. I suppose the collector likes to keep a very low profile. Asking him about strange occurrences, he also has a tale for me. Once, a long time ago, a group pulled up an old casket full of curious objects. That same night, the dockworker tells me, the fog rolled in. Everyone on that ship perished, in one way or another, but ever since then the fog has remained. Is this just a scary tale, I wonder, or is there some truth to what he is saying? After all, this place doesn't exactly seem normal. Also here I notice a new location, a painter. This kind gentleman allows me to change the decorations and color of my ship. Most importantly, I can change which flag I fly, and, I am told, I might find more flags around the world if I keep my eyes peeled. Lastly, I visit the trader. Here I am able to sell the gold ring I dredged up earlier, acquiring the necessary funds for repairs. Back at Greater Marrow, I am finally able to repair my vessel. Of course, now the Fishmonger's is open for business again. I got attacked by a giant fish, thanks for asking. Now, fully equipped and with daylight to spare, I head around to where I spotted the strange red light before. Here I also find this strange altar-like rock. It seems to be requesting curved fish. Cod, a fish I have caught before, are curved in such a way. And I put together that precisely 5 of them would fit these slots perfectly. Of course, I am attacked again, the damage forcing me to drop 1 lumber and 1 scrap, which I had just collected enough of for the builder's request. I begrudgingly deposit what I can and sleep until daylight. Heading back to Greater Marrow, I spend my research part to research a hydraulic rod. This rod will allow me to catch ocean fish, the one other type of fish that I have seen here that I haven't been able to catch yet. I drop off some cloth in the dry dock and then make my way to the shipwright to repair my damage. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money to actually purchase the hydraulic rod yet. Making my way over to Blackstone Isle, I visit the collector. I hand him the large golden key and I am granted an achievement, the key. I note that it seems to metamorphose in his hands before my very eyes. It shrinks somewhat. However, the collector seems irritated that more was not found. It appears that the other pieces I am after traveled farther than anticipated. To aid me in my travels, the collector reads something from his book. His words unlock a new ability, haste. The collector then informs me of where to head next, southeast to the Gale cliffs. This must be where the next relic, the next piece of the puzzle, lies. Before I leave, I ask the collector how long he has lived here. Turns out that he has been here a couple of decades and that he used to be a fisherman in a past life, many years ago. When I ask him who owned these relics he is after, he seems unwilling to tell me. It appears the collector is hiding something. I take my leave of him for now. A little pop-up informs me of what exactly haste does. It gives me a speed boost, but it heats up my engine and increases panic. Too much heat will lead to damage to my vessel. Fun stuff. Before I head back to town, I stop a moment to ponder the lighthouse, truly a beacon of safety in such an infected world such as this. And that word seems to fit perfectly. Something has infected this place. Whether or not the locals will admit it outright or not, at least the lighthouse stands tall despite everything else. Back at Greater Marrow, I am approached by the lighthouse keeper, who mistakes me for an old friend. Perhaps, I wonder, could she have thought I was the old crazy mayor of Little Marrow? The next morning, I decide to head around the back of Little Marrow to find the wreck of the grieving father's son. Speaking to the father, I give him the belt buckle which I have found. He is, understandably, overjoyed. For payment, he gives me a research part. The next day, I quickly grab some lumber and scrap and make my way back to Steel Point. Here, I deposit the resources, fulfilling the last of the requirements for the builder. I take the opportunity to grab some more resources, and, heading back to the Marrows, I discover that a fish I had left in my storage has turned to rot. Apparently, they only keep for so long. You know, that does make sense, so fair enough. Back in Greater Marrow, I inform the builder the task is completed, and she states that there is no sense in wasting time as she asks me for one final favor: transport to the island. I make a couple quick stops first, 1 to sell my fish, 2 to deposit resources for future upgrades in the dry dock, where I can store upgrade materials as I acquire them, and 3 to purchase the hydraulic rod I researched earlier. This allows me to catch ocean fish, and after installing it, I am granted an achievement, feeling prepared for installing equipment into every available equipment slot. Now, with plenty of room on board, I welcome the builder to my ship. On my way back to Steel Point, I make a quick stop to catch my first oceanic fish, a bronze whaler, which is actually a shark, not a whale. At Steel Point, the builder disembarks, and as a reward for my help, she gives me 2 research parts. I'll take it. Finding myself near that strange shrine asking for 5 cod, I fish up a couple more and deposit them there. However, I am 1 short. Unfortunately, it is night, so I can't catch any more until daytime. I head back to the village. The next day, I decide to fish a bit to get some more money, and, upon fishing up another bronze whaler, I am gifted an achievement, Careless Harvesting, for depleting 25 fishing spots in total. Back in Greater Marrow, I deposit the wood I have dredged up into the dry dock, the last of the materials I need for each of the 4 upgrades. Now I only need to purchase each upgrade. Fortunately, I have the money available. These don't have to be done all at one time, I just prefer to do it that way. Now I have 2 more spaces for fishing rods, 4 net spaces for trawl nets, which are now available for purchase, 2 more engine spaces, and 1 more light space. I also have access to the next level, a new hull upgrade. However, that is going to require a few more resources. Since I can, I also decide to do some research unlocking the twin prop engine. However, I lack the funds to purchase it after my recent upgrades. Luckily, my crab pots are nearby. I make a quick harvesting run, and with this money, I am able to replace my 2 engines with 1 faster one. Before I head to the Gale Cliffs, I make one last stop. I still need to deposit the 5th and final cod. Once all the fish are placed, a wave washes over them, sweeping them away. In their place, I find a curious object, a sinew spindle. Gross. This is like when a cat brings you a dead rat thinking you want it. I'm happy you're happy, strange fish shrine, but that is just nasty. Reading over its stats, the sinew spindle is just a worse fishing rod, except for one stat. It appears it has a higher chance of catching aberrations, which, yeah, that makes sense. Into my storage it goes. Noticing a small group of islands nearby, I head over towards them. Here I find a boat very similar to mine. I approach it cautiously, since that giant angler which attacked me earlier disguises as one of these, but it seems harmless. I call out, and sure enough, someone is on board. It appears this fellow sailor is similarly being stalked. They were to deliver a package to Little Marrow, but they have been waylaid here. Notably, they seem to have been stalked by a huge leviathan, not a relatively large anglerfish. It appears there are more hostile creatures afoot. Since I'm already sailing that way anyways, I offer to deliver the package for him, which I immediately regret upon seeing it, a slimy cardboard box with plenty of tape and black slime oozing from its seams. Am I delivering a chemical weapon or something? Is this gonna get me on a list? I'm told it is for the dock worker, and even the sailor himself doesn't know what's inside, but it might be whispering. Maybe since he feels pity on me, he also gives me a book to read through while I sail. Around the back of this island chain, I notice a glowing spot. Dredging here, I find a flag with a serpent decoration, the first of many unique flags I will find on my journey. Despite the late hour, I need to head back into town. In Little Marrow, I deliver the package to the dock worker. He takes the package, puts it up to his ear, tells me to wish him good luck, and leaves without even paying me. That, I decide, is not a good sign. Back in Greater Marrow, the mayor chastises me for not getting enough rest. Almost like he sent them, upon setting out to check my crab pots, some birds attack me due to my high panic, stealing one of my crabs. I quickly redock and sleep until I am in a calmer state of mind. I also purchase an improved light for my boat, so that's nice. Running out of things to do, I set out to explore just a bit more, reeling in this giant sailfish which barely fits in my boat, and a blacktip reef shark. I make another mad dash back to a port. After sleeping, I run into a rock and lose my sailfish to the damage. Maybe I do need to be resting more. Back at Greater Marrow, I sell what I have and earn an achievement. Lives for profit, for selling a total of $2,500 worth of fish. Next, I grab all my crab pots, repair my hull, and finally set out for the location of my next relic. I sail southeast, towards the Gale cliffs. On the way, I notice a small group of islands. Here I find a curious individual, a man in blue hooded robes with sickly pale skin. He asks me to help with his hunger, yikes, and requests a blue mackerel. I suppose I'll return to you later. For now, it is on to a new location. Approaching the Gale cliffs, I am presented with two options, left or right. I decide right and sail up to a small town, docking while staring down a tornado. This town, I learn, is called Ingfell. Choosing from my options, I speak to the retired whaler first. This older gentleman informs me that Ingfell used to be a whaling town, with the town's economy subsisting on this trade. However, it seems the whales moved on around 20 years ago. Curiously, around the same amount of time the collector stated he has lived in that old house on Blackstone Isle. Ever since the whales left, the town has struggled greatly. Asking the whaler about wrecks, he is quick to tell me that the real wreck is the local town nearby the cliffs. Apparently, his brother moved there, ditched them, he says, when things got tough. He states he must be regretting that decision now, but doesn't elaborate further. Next, I speak to another Ingfell resident. First, I notice she has a quest for me. She's in need of a delicacy, an aged conger eel. Really, a rotting conger eel, but the dog keeps digging them up and eating them. Look at him all guilty next to her. He definitely did it. So she asked me to bring her an aged conger eel, which I can get from inside the cliffs, at night. I add it to my pursuits. The lady also tells me a bit about the Gale Cliffs. Long ago, this was a safe haven for pirates and other such criminals. However, as is not uncommon with such groups, a disagreement was had and a great battle was fought south of the cliffs, leading to a great many wrecks with lots of treasure aboard. Lastly, looking to sell my fish, the lady informs me of a merchant across the bay. That must have been what was to my left when I was approaching. I decide to head over that direction to make her acquaintance. She seems very pleasant. Luckily, it seems as though I can sell my fish here, as well as purchase equipment, upgrade my ship, and access my storage. While I'm here, the traveling merchant mentions the photographer, letting me know that she should be somewhere on a small island south of the Marrows. I'll need to keep that in mind. Checking out her equipment, I note that she has some research parts for sale, as well as a special resource, refined metal, a rarer, harder to obtain upgrade material. Sailing out, I discover a new message, a manifest of recently acquired artifacts. Nothing in particular jumps out at me about this one. Heading over to the other town, I quickly find a hermit. This man, it turns out, has been stubbornly holding out here for a while, but after his wife passed, he has begun to rethink his position. However, complicating things, it turns out that this hermit is actually the whaler's brother, the one he had a disagreement with. Apparently, long ago, the hermit stole their family crest when he left Ingfell, and some creature, the one responsible for the constant rumbling, knocked the crest into the deep. The hermit refuses to return to his brother without the object that maybe, somehow, could make things right. I tell the man that I'll keep an eye out for it. I approach the nearby town, where I can see is a red pillar of light, indicating that the next object for my quest for the collector is located here. Unfortunately, I am unable to pass, as the text informs me that clearing the debris blocking me would require some strong explosives. Returning to the hermit, I ask him about explosives, and he informs me that his brother, the whaler, used to specialize in such things. So, starting there might be a good first step. He also marks the last location of his lost family crest on the map. Asking about the rumbling in the cliffs, the hermit blames a hateful serpent, devouring the foundations of the cliffs, leading to the rock falls and instability. In fact, as it emerges from the earth, it often knocks rocks loose, indicating its approach. I decide to keep a lookout for such a creature. Making my way back to Ingfell, I ask the whaler about explosives. He confirms that indeed he did used to dabble in such things, and he has recently been pondering taking up the profession again. I let him know that if he makes them, I'll use them, and this seems to give him some encouragement, though he makes no promises. Back at the traveling merchant's, I decide it would be kind to ask if she is in need of any help with anything. Turns out, yes, she does. The merchant has been trying to compile a list of fish locations, but has been unable to do so with a few specific ones. I offer to assist her with this, and I get a new pursuit and 4 fish to track down: the oarfish, gulper eel, Goliath tigerfish, and coelacanth. 4 seems an oddly specific number. Sure enough, by asking about each one, I find hints indicating that there is one special fish to catch in each location, and it looks like the one I'm to catch here at the Gale Cliffs is the oarfish. Conversing with the merchant afterwards, I learn that she is a big fan of traveling. Something tells me this won't be the last I see of her. Lastly, checking the upgrade requirements for a new hull, I notice I am missing a refined metal. I decide to purchase this refined metal from the merchant now, and I quickly place it into its slot. Only a couple more things to go. After taking a bit of time to mark out the areas on my map I've yet to explore, I decide to make the most of a new day and head into the heart of the cliffs. Finding myself blocked or chased any way that I go, I decide to head around the back of the Gale cliffs in hope of some better luck. Reading my new message, it seems that the newlywed couple was still facing some issues. She wanted to spend time with him, but not come off as too needy. He didn't want her to be bored, in danger, or in the way, and neither appeared to be too happy about the situation. I do learn one very interesting thing. It appears that the individual who I will now refer to as the old sailor was a dredger just like me. The wife seems quite excited at this new development. Around back of the Gale Cliffs, I find many broken pirate ships, and I remember what the Ingfell resident was telling me about this place once being a pirate haven. I suppose they did have some disagreements. I salvage their wrecks for some much-needed cloth and disembark in a nearby campsite for some rest. Here, rummaging around, I discover a research part. Once rested, I decide to head back into the cliffs, towards the location of the Hermit's lost family crest. Grabbing the crest, I remember that I've yet to meet a waterfall that didn't have something to hide, and so I head behind this one and discover a little area. Here I find a school of fish which look suspiciously like oarfish. Unfortunately, it appears this fish is an abyssal fish, a class of fish I am not able to catch with my current equipment. I'll have to return later. I also find a rotting chest here with a big bag of doubloons, and a refined metal, both treasures in their own right. With the crest in hand, I make my way back around the outside of the cliffs, back to the hermit. On the way, I discover another one of those strange altars. This one appears to want crabs. I just have an intuition, what can I say? This seems crabby. The clawed creature where I drop off my catch, and the crab on the slab itself. The text saying that it's decorated with crab-like creatures. I really think this thing is trying to tell me it wants some crabs. I guess I will go get some. I mark this place on my map. First, however, I return to the traveling merchant, organize my items, and grab all of my upgrade materials. It turns out I now have enough for my first hull upgrade. Placing the wooden cloth into their slots, I press... I don't have enough money. Barnacles, I just found a bag of doubloons, but I'm too poor. I don't have any way to sell it here. I head out, catch a couple of fish, sell them, and then return to purchase my first upgrade, earning an achievement, hull improved. Now my hull has more space and can take more damage, which, I mean, I'll never need that, of course. I almost never take damage. I take a moment to check out the next level of upgrades, which I will now begin working towards. Now, finally, I head back to the hermit to return the lost family crest. He is, of course, beyond thankful that I have found it, but he has one final favor to ask, that I return the crest to his brother at Ingfell on his behalf, an apology for old wrongs. Back at Ingfell, I do just that. The retired whaler takes the offering in a characteristically calm manner, but through his gruffness he seems more than willing to make up for lost time and past mistakes. He tells me his brother is welcome back and that he can stay in his old workshop, and while I'm at it, the whaler informs me, he recently planted some explosives that he was unable to set off. He asks me to finish the job for him, which, yes, of course, a random old guy asking me to detonate explosives? These are the kinds of opportunities I live for. Ignoring all of my current tasks, I pick up some crabs and head back to that strange altar. After placing all the crabs onto it, they come to life and scurry away. Suddenly it splits in two, revealing a... What on earth is that? I don't want that in my ship. Talk about a bad luck charm. I would never, ever, ever willingly bring that thing into my fishing vessel, but, oh well, I suppose I'll do what must be done. This thing, the Mouth of the Deep, appears to be a crab pot, and a pretty good one at that. I decide to use it from now on. Heading back into the cliffs in search of that conger eel that I need for the pursuit for the Ingfell resident, I instead find a devil ray and an unwelcome guest. I decide to make myself scarce. Back in the cliffs, I find what the whaler was telling me about. Some rocks with a long fuse running to them. I make the obvious choice and... oh, I guess I don't need to back up. I was so close I bet I can't hear a thing anymore. But at least I can make it through the cliffs now. Returning to the whaler, he informs me that he heard the blast with almost a grin on his face. In the meantime, things are now ready for his brother, and he asks me to let him know. Returning to the hermit, I tell him the good news. Relieved by this, he informs me that he is ready whenever I am. I take him aboard my vessel and sail back to Ingfell with my passenger. There, the brothers finally reunite, putting aside their heated history for the sake of the time that they still have left. As a sort of reward, the whaler informs me that he has been working on some more packed explosives if I ever need any more. And yes, I do actually need that. I need quite a bit. A new option is available in town, the whaling yards, where I am gifted an explosive and I have the option to purchase more. In the cliffs, I finally find the conger eel I have been looking for. These guys only come out at night, it seems. After some tetrising, I even managed to fit a second one in my hull. I head back to the merchant and sell all my fish except the one conger eel. Turns out that she too is now carrying a supply of packed explosives, available for purchase. While here, I decide to research the improved trawl net, which I purchase and equip. The trawl net allows me to trawl, dropping a net into the water to catch fish passively. I don't end up using this too much since I find being able to catch all the types of fish more useful than passively catching some fish, but it is still a good thing to have. Returning to the nearby town where the hermit once lived, I can finally blow up the debris blocking my path. I do so and quickly approach the marked spot to dredge. From the water, I pull out a music box, the next relic in my quest for the collector. I spend some time collecting fish for money while my eel rots, and, once it does, I head back to the Ingfell resident. Unfortunately, it appears that she doesn't actually want rot, so she won't accept this pile of goo, which means I need another eel. I head back in to catch one, spinning in circles to make the time pass quickly, as it needs to be night. Then I fish some up. The snake-like monster which inhabits these cliffs has gone completely silent ever since I blew up part of the cliffs, so luckily it is not an issue anymore. I while away the time collecting some fish to sell. And soon enough the eel becomes stale. Back to the Ingfell resident I go, who tells me that the eel isn't quite aged enough. What do you want, lady? Do you want rot or not? You're giving me some mixed signals here. So I head out, collect some more resources to pass some time, and then head back. This time it appears as though the eel has been sufficiently aged. She gladly accepts it from me and pays me a small sum for my troubles. Back at the traveling merchant, I purchase a couple upgrades, increasing my cargo spaces by 4 and increasing the places I can install fishing rods by 3, allowing me greater flexibility. I only have one more upgrade left before I can begin work on a tier 3 hull upgrade. I also spend my research parts to research some new rods, neither of which I'll actually end up using as the next rod is even better. However, I still need some more parts before I can research that one. Before heading back to the collector, I decide to explore some nearby islands which I hadn't yet ventured out to. Afterwards, with all my pursuits resolved, I pack up my crab pots and decide to head back to the Marrows. I sail away from the Gale cliffs. On Blackstone Isle, I approach the collector and nothing. I then remember I left the music box in my storage. I retrieve it quickly and approach the collector. I bring the music box inside and the collector admires it. I am given an achievement, the secret, for having found this mystical relic. As a reward for bringing him this item, the collector once again reads from his book. A wave of energy washes over the room and I unlock a new ability, Manifest. I can now instantly return to Blackstone Isle. With some words of not quite encouragement, but eagerness, the collector urges me to find the 3 relics still missing. He suggests a place called Basin might be a good area to continue my search, and he marks a location on my map. Before leaving, I ask the collector why he can't search for these relics himself. He informs me that the ocean is no longer willing to cooperate with him. That's why he needs me, as a surrogate. A little creepy, but let's be honest, in this place that kind of behavior hardly registers as weird. Before I head in that direction, I have a couple of things I need to do. First, back at Little Marrow, I turn in the flags that I found, and, of course, I equip one. Then I make a stop by the traders to sell all my gold and other such objects. Next, the dock worker. Oh, you don't look so good, buddy. You didn't eat whatever was in that black gunk-filled box, did you? 'Cause, I'm gonna be honest, kinda seems like you might have. It appears a black, oozing infection has left the dock worker catatonic. Back in Greater Marrow, I am approached by the lighthouse keeper. She asks me whether I think it wise to be sailing such a great expanse. She says that this time I should be more careful. Lady, that was like my first trip out, and I'll have you know I only got attacked like 5 times. However, even with all my experience, she informs me, it is still dangerous, and then she abruptly leaves. That was an odd encounter. While here, I decide to talk to the mayor, and I ask him about Blackstone Isle. He tells me that he doesn't know much, but that it was sold to a private owner some 20 years ago. This would make sense with what I know about the collector, since he himself told me he had been there about that long. Strangely enough, in 20 years, the mayor has never actually met the collector. I suppose he is even more reclusive than I initially thought. I check in with everyone here, but they don't seem to have anything to report. All except the builder, who happens to have a new book for me. I just ran out of things to read a while ago, so that's a nice find. With some upgrade materials in my cargo, I make one more stop at the dock workers to deposit these and to purchase my next upgrade, increasing my engine slots by 1 and also unlocking access to begin working on my next hull upgrade. I already have some stuff for it, including the difficult refined metal. Just a few more materials to collect and then it will be mine. Finally, remembering that strange robed individual who asked me for a blue mackerel, I fish one up and sail on over to him. He acts all creepy, as should probably be expected from strange hooded figures, and when I give him the fish, he tears into it with his hands, pulls out the heart, and chews it right up. No, I'm not actually hungry. You can have the rest. Of course, his hunger still unsatiated, he demands another fish from me, a tiger mackerel. Right, I'll get right on that. No, I mean it. I immediately sail back to Gale Cliffs, catch a tiger mackerel, find a shipwreck on my way back with the research part, score, and lastly, return to the pale blue thing, and hand it the next fish. This one meets a similar fate to the first. Of course, he demands a third fish, this time a snake mackerel, which I have no idea where to catch. So I suppose you'll just have to wait for course number 3. I have other business to attend to for now. I use my new ability to quickly warp back to Blackstone Isle. I take a rest there to calm my nerves after such a trip, and finally, with a new day dawning, I set a course southwest, towards the Stellar Basin. Making my way in the direction of the Stellar Basin, I notice some islands I've yet to explore. Sailing around one of them, I notice a pile of items discarded upon a shore. Approaching these things, I find something amongst them, some photography equipment, and it is now that I remember a couple of people mentioning a photographer residing somewhere about this region of the map. Before I set out in search of the photographer, however, it is time to head to the Stellar Basin. Immediately upon approach, I find a new note. As nighttime falls, I take survey of my surroundings. Red jellyfish dance over the water, and bioluminescent octopus fill an ocean brimming with coral. However, most striking of all is what lies in the middle, which I only get a glimpse at. An enormous creature fills the center of this circular basin, its long glowing tendrils emerging from the deeper waters. I decide it's probably a bad idea to swim over whatever that thing is, and I head to a nearby building. This, it turns out, is a research outpost with a laboratory and a generator. However, visiting the laboratory, I am informed that this place is rather run down. It seems this research outpost is no longer operational. Exploring around, I find a research part, as well as a note left by, I assume, the researchers. It appears they evacuated in a hurry. Large gashes run through the floors and walls of the station, and I don't have to think too hard about what might have caused them. With my new research parts, I take advantage of my time here to research the next upgraded rod, the versatile rod. This rod, once I've actually bought and installed it, will allow me to catch mangrove and volcanic fish, neither of which I've actually seen yet, but I know they're out there. Remembering my note, I take it out to read. It seems to be written by the old sailor's wife, and, to be honest, it doesn't look good. It seems as though the sailor and his crew found a large wooden casket while dredging up the waters. I seem to remember the dock worker mentioning something like that. This casket, once pried open, did something to him. Perhaps to them. It appears, ever since this event, a dreadful cold has inflicted the minds and limbs of the sailor's wife. Whatever might have been in that casket, it should have been left in the deep. I decide to sleep to clear my mind. In the morning, I get a better look at the creature which fills the Stellar Basin. From a good distance away, of course. On my map, I notice the red X the collector left for me, inconveniently located right in the center of that thing. Where else? I also notice 2 black dots on the map, places where I will be able to dock. I decide to head towards the lower one, and here I meet a familiar face. It looks like the traveling merchant was true to her word and name. She does enjoy traveling. I take advantage of the opportunity to grab my crab pots and purchase the versatile rod, installing it in my ship. Then I disperse my crab pots around the basin. The next morning I decide to make my way around the outside of Stellar Basin, exploring the long curved islands that make up the edge of this basin. Along the coastline I find an abandoned village. Approaching one of the houses, I notice something which, nearing closer, I find to be a dog, sorely neglected and nearly starving. It takes me a little while, but eventually I am able to entice the poor canine aboard my vessel. It looks like I'll have a sailing companion for a while. Blowing up some debris blocking my path, I dredge up a refined metal previously inaccessible to me. That will come in handy for upgrades later, I'm sure. On a nearby island I find another altar, just like the 2 I found previously. This one requests 4 large, powerful fish, and there is lots of space to fill. I'll need to keep a lookout for some larger fish. Continuing my exploration of nearby islands, I circle another one and find, in an alcove, another hooded figure. I suppose one wasn't bad enough. This one is dressed in gold, and he's no more cheery than his friend, demanding a fish to consume, to fulfill the void's calling. This time, a red snapper. I'm not certain I should be helping this guy, but whatever, I add it to my pursuits. Nearby, I find a campsite with a sapphire ring. I'll take that, thank you very much. And on another island, I find a little tent set up. Here, I discover the photographer, currently engaged in some photography. However, it appears that her current equipment isn't working out too great, and, what's more, the best of her equipment was recently lost overboard. Equipment, I recall, I actually found earlier. I go to grab it. Wait, it's in my storage. I keep forgetting I have to actually have it in my ship to do these things. I'll need to retrieve the equipment from storage first. On my way back, I discover what looks like a crashed raft. Inspecting the debris, I discover something curious. A partial map of someplace. I'll hang on to that for now. Next, I head back to the hooded figure in gold to give him a red snapper I recently caught, and I'll let you guess what happened next. And one is never enough, of course. A fangtooth is next on the menu. Whatever it is, it's tiny and toothy. Making a quick stop at the merchants, I rest up and decide to explore the other side of the Stellar Basin, where I find some salvage. Inside, I find another piece of the map. Nearby, I approach another black dot on my map, what appears to be a giant castle-like fortress. Docking here, I find someone to talk to, a researcher. We quickly make our introductions. Apparently, it is quite unpopulated around this area, and she doesn't get many visitors. Coincidentally, she tells me she could use a fisherman's help with something. The researcher is here to collect samples to study. Originally, she was living in the research outpost I found earlier, but it was attacked. Yeah, saw that. She confirms what I suspected, that the creature in the center of the basin was the attacker. Not a huge shock there. Her research has slowed since then, so if I were to have some time to help collect some samples of the local fish, it would be a great assistance to her. Sounds easy enough. I accept her quest/pursuit. Before I head out, I decide to ask the researcher a little bit about herself. She's not had an amazing time, I learn, being the only female student in her department and being posted here to this uninhabited area on the outskirts of the world. Sometimes, she tells me, she gets lonely. Maybe a pet would help, she says almost as an afterthought. Okay, don't judge me. I put the dog in storage, okay? I can't give it to her because it's in storage at the merchants. I asked her to check up on him. He's fine. He gets seasick, so I couldn't keep him on board, but I'll need to grab him before returning here. Asking the researcher about the creature which attacked her, she tells me it didn't attack her, more so the research outpost itself. The noisy generator probably set it off. With new tasks to complete, I sail out once again. Nearby, I find another bottle in the water. This message tells of a happier event from earlier in the timeline, before the strange events of the other notes. The wife writes here of their proposal, how he surprised her and what the ring looked like. It is a sweet note, if only the rest were similar to this one. Back at the merchants, I pick up the dog from daycare and combine the two portions of my map. It looks like there's one more to find. While out catching fish for the researcher's request, I managed to snag an achievement, lifted from the deep, for catching 250 fish total using a fishing rod. Nice! Since I can, I decide to head to the center of Stellar Basin, intentionally provoking what lies there. Hilariously enough, another enemy happens to spawn at the same time due to my high panic levels. That creature has nothing to do with the tentacled one in the center of the basin. I just got unlucky with the timing. While trawling, I catch the last fish I need for the researcher, and also, something else slithers into my hold. When I check my cargo, one of my fish is infected with black boils. Not a good sign. I decide to discard the infected squid before it does anything untoward, just in case. Returning to the old fortress with the dog and fish, I begin by introducing the researcher to her new canine companion. She is surprised by this, but both the dog and her seem quite happy in each other's company. She asks me if I'm sure, and I say of course, and the dog appears alongside her. I'm sure that red-eyed thing will go away with a little more time. In thanks, the dog vomits up a ring, which I take. Thanks, I guess. What is this game? I swear. Next, I hand in all of the specimens that the researcher had requested. She is thankful, but she tells me she also needs some from deeper down. This is a problem since the only deeper down part of the basin is where that thing is. Also, I don't have a fishing rod that can catch abyssal or hadal fish, the two types of deep-water fish. To solve the second of my problems, catching abyssal fish, the researcher asks me to visit the research lab. There, she thinks I should be able to find some parts she can use to make something for me. So, heading back to the lab, I rummage about once more. This time, however, I find some prototype parts that I had previously missed. Immediately returning to the researcher, I hand over these parts, and with them she constructs a sampling device, a custom fishing rod which allows me to catch abyssal fish. I quickly install it in place of my trawl net. As for the other problem, the creature, the researcher informs me of a repulsion machine she has been working on which should deter the creature from attacking for a period of time, or enrage it, either or. With the power from the generator at the research outpost, it should emit a sufficiently disruptive light and noise, for a few hours at least, long enough to catch a couple of the fish she still needs. Done talking, I check my research tab and find a new option, bottomless lines. This will allow me to catch both abyssal and hadal fish. I researched the new option, but I still need to buy it from the merchant. Back at the research outpost, I connect the researcher's repulsion machine to the generator, and I activate it. Exactly as expected, a bright light and loud noise begin emitting from the station. The creature, hopefully, should now be subdued for a little while. Before continuing along my quest, I decide to make a quick stop back at the Marrows. Using my manifest ability, I am granted an achievement, Dimensional Bypass, for traversing a long distance using the ability. Back at Greater Marrow, I decide to skip over my newly researched fishing rod, and I research the next option, the Fathomless Winch, this one allowing me to catch abyssal, hadal, and ocean fish. At the shipwrights, I purchase and install my new rod, earning an achievement, Swift Reaper, for having a fishing speed of over 200%. At the nearby Little Marrow, I make a stop by the traders to sell my expansive collection of oddities, which were piling up a little bit. I also deposit and switch out my flag at the painters. Before I make my way back to the basin, I grab the photography equipment and head towards the island where I met the photographer. There, I give her the equipment, and, as a thank you, she gives me an old spare camera, unlocking an ability. I can now take pictures. On my way back, I take a quick second to collect some cloth for my hull upgrade, and check my crab pots. Back at the traveling merchants, I deposit the resources I collected and purchase my new hull upgrade, unlocking an achievement, Hull Refined, as well as 9 more cargo spaces for my hull. Returning to the research outpost, I once again activate the disruptor, which had turned off in my absence, and head into the middle of the Stellar Basin for the first time to catch the fish for the researcher, and, not forgetting the collector's task, the relic which lies at its very center. While searching for a few remaining fish, I notice some rubble I somehow overlooked previously. Here, I find the final piece of my map. I quickly fish up the last fish that I needed for the researcher, and head back to the fortress to deposit them. Having done so, the researcher tells me that she has good news and bad news. The bad news is that the fish I caught have high level of cellular mutations. Not a good sign. The good news is that we know what's causing it. The thing in the center of the basin. Gee, lady, I could have told you that without the fancy equipment. Excited by our discoveries, the researcher tells me that she needs to write up this information. As a reward for all of my help, she gives me a book that she wrote, to read out on the sea. While here, I access my storage and put together each of the pieces of my map. Looking at my big map, I search for the place indicated on the, let's call it what it is, treasure map, and I find it here, to the west of Stellar Basin. Heading over to the spot, I am greeted by a new friend. And some more. I figured that those were the treasure, and I'm happy with it too, but then I discover a chest on a chain. Opening it up, I discover various trinkets and treasures inside. I guess the whales were just a lucky bonus. While retrieving my crab pots in preparation to leave, I am gifted an achievement, Trapped by These Walls, for catching 100 crabs in total. With everything collected, sold, and/or stored, I use Manifest to teleport back to Blackstone Isle. Here, I meet with the collector to give him the enormous jewel-encrusted band I collected from the center of Stellar Basin, earning an achievement for doing so, the Bond. As a reward, like the last times, the collector reads something from his red book, unlocking a new ability, Banish. This ability allows me to keep enemies at bay, for a time, similar to how the research station works. It protects me. The collector encourages me, pointing me towards the Twisted Strand as the next stop on my journey. There I might find the next relic. Before I leave, I ask the collector what he plans to do with the relics once they are all collected. His response is rather cryptic, but his final sentence is not. They hold the power to recall what was once lost. What exactly did you lose? I find myself wondering. I also ask him about the old mayor of Little Marrow, the one who disappeared long ago. Apparently, he used to join the collector on the water sometimes. I remember that the collector used to be a sailor like me, but he was not of much help to him on these trips. He knows not what has happened to him since. At that, I take my leave. Before heading to the Twisted Strand, I have a few tasks to complete. First, I farm some upgrade materials and catch a few fish. Second, back at Greater Marrow, the lighthouse keeper once again approaches, asking me if I have found what I am looking for. When I tell her almost, she asks me how I can be sure, after the last time and what happened then. And then she leaves without telling me exactly what did happen then, whenever then might be. When I approach her lighthouse to continue the conversation, I inform her what I have been up to, collecting relics for the collector. She seems confused. Apparently she's never met the collector either. When I ask her about the old mayor of Little Marrow, she is pained by the memory. She isn't really open to talking about it much either. I leave for now. Third, back at Little Marrow, I stop by the traders to sell my stock, and, in the process of doing so, I earn an achievement, Cash for Gold, for selling a total of $1,500 worth of trinkets. Fourth, back in the Stellar Basin, I notice a fish I've yet to catch, and, reviewing my encyclopedia, I notice that it looks just like one of the 4 special fish that the traveling merchant asked me to catch for her. I quickly head over to it and almost get smacked by a tentacle for straying too close to the creature in the middle. I quickly reel it in, a gulper eel. Back at the merchant's, I let her know of my discovery, and she marks the info down, rewarding me with 2 research parts. I also get to sell the fish for money. Fifth, back at the altar I left uncompleted, I spend some time filtering through my encyclopedia looking for the fish that will fit. Soon enough, I figure it out. Nearby, I grab a hammerhead shark and place it in its spot. Then I do the same with the ghost shark. Back near Blackstone Isle, I pick up a blacktip reef shark and its ugly cousin. In the morning, I snag a bronze whaler. Returning to the altar, I deposit the last of these sharks into their places. Exactly like the last time, I am rewarded with a horrible fishing contraption. This rod appears to be worse than my current rod, but it increases my likelihood of finding aberrations. Into storage it goes. Sixth, with much better equipment, I make one more stop by the Gale cliffs, behind the waterfall I had explored earlier, to fish up the rare fish located here, the oarfish. Not going to win any beauty contests anytime soon, are we, my friend? Just like the last time, I informed the merchant of this, and I am given 2 more research parts for my trouble. Finally, finished with all my various tasks for now, I set a course northwest towards the Twisted Strand. Before making it to the Twisted Strand, I find some islands to explore. Of course there's a third one. I'm beginning to dislike these guys, I'm not gonna lie. This one is in a purple robe and, like the others, he gives me a pursuit to find a fish, this time a tarpon. Yeah, I'll get right on that. What I actually do is head northwards towards a black dot near what appears to be the opening of the Twisted Strand. Here I find my good friend, the traveling merchant. While here I use some research parts I've been accumulating to research the twin jet drive, a more powerful engine. I quickly purchase my new engine and equip it alongside my second, smaller one, earning an achievement, No Time to Linger, for reaching a combined engine speed of 75 knots. Before setting out, I take a moment to review my map. Looks like it's basically a straight shot in to the spot the collector marked on my map. It also looks like there should be a place to dock there as well. I decide to head into the Twisted Strand. I was right, it was a straight shot. Here I find a place to dock, and I am greeted by, wow, I bet you've seen better days, my friend. Instead of introducing himself, this strange figure begins talking about the local wretches, certainly referring to that weird yellow thing I saw earlier. This, it turns out, is the Airmen, who crashed here a long time ago, and who has been trying to rid the jungle of those things ever since. He calls them mind suckers. Originally, it turns out the Airmen had a crew, but they've since met a grisly fate. And the Airman is out for revenge. Revenge that must be had before he leaves this place. I decide to offer him my help. First, the Airman informs me we need to locate some lost pieces of a mortar. Then we'll bomb the beasts. I do like a simple plan. North and east is where I am told I'll have the best chances to find the mortar pieces, and the Airman marks a couple of spots on my map. Before I head out, I ask the Airman what he will do to honor his fallen comrades. He tells me that he's taken to hanging up their dog tags, but he hasn't been able to recover them all. If, while I'm out there looking, I were to find any, he would appreciate it if I brought them back to him. Concerning the creatures, he gives me a valuable hint. Their vision seems to be based primarily on movement. My 2 tasks in mind, I set out. I begin systematically exploring the Twisted Strand, freezing whenever I happen to see one of those creatures emerge. Oh look, a crocodile! On the east side of the Strand I find a crashed plane and a spot to dredge. Doing so, I pull up the first half of the mortar, the barrel. Amongst some nearby mushrooms I find another message labeled only with question marks. Opening it up, I read its contents. I can only surmise that this letter was written by the old sailor's wife. Whatever they pulled up in that casket seems to have deeply affected her, for she writes that she feels as though she has been frozen through and through. The old sailor, too, seems to have been affected, the coldness with which he treats her just as intolerable as the one plaguing her body. Things seem to have gone from bad to worse for the couple. Deep in the heart of the Strand, I find another one of these guillotine-looking contraptions, one of which I have noticed lies at the entrance of this place. These look painful and important. Next, while fishing about for some more upgrade materials, I stumble upon yet another crashed plane, my third so far. This one, fortunately, has another set of dog tags, which I collect for my new compatriot. I return to the merchant to unload my supplies. While there, I decide to use my stockpiled research parts to research every single crab pot available. This gives me an achievement, Researcher Pots. Now I can purchase the best crab pot immediately, instead of having to slowly improve, something which I do right away, purchasing a reinforced crab pot, which has lots of space and lasts for many days, to replace my old ones, which I sell. Exploring farther, I blow up another branch blocking my path, and, inside here, I find a suspicious-looking fish. This, I realize, must be the rare fish that the traveling merchant is after. I get semi-attacked by a crocodile, but after he swims away, I approach the spot and fish it up, reeling in the Goliath tigerfish. Heading back, I stop a little too slowly and unfortunately alert the minesucker. He chases me around for a while, and I lure him into the middle of whatever this contraption is, the third I've found, but it doesn't appear to be operational. Eventually, he gives up, I guess, and I make my escape, barely. Back at the merchant's, I learned something about this place. The roots which occasionally block my path can move, sometimes blocking one way and sometimes another. The route is always changing. That explains a few things, to be honest. I also tell her about the Goliath tigerfish, and, like the last times, she rewards me with 2 research parts as payment for my services. Sailing around a bit, I quickly locate another crashed plane among the sands of the Strand. Here, just like the other times, I find some dog tags. That makes it 3 so far in total. And here, tucked amongst the trees, I find yet another altar. This one is decorated with a deformed fish, and the area I am given to place the fish in is a familiar color of magenta, the same color that marks aberrations. Looks like I'll need to catch one of those for this thing. Next, approaching the other spot the airman marked on my map, I find another crashed plane, and a place to dredge. I do so and pull up a mortar frame, the other half of the mortar. Returning to the merchant, I deposit some recently collected upgrade materials, finally filling out all of the upgrade material requirements for my next tier. All that is left is to purchase each of them with the money I have been saving up. With these upgrades, I now have 2 more rod spaces, 2 more net spaces, 4 more cargo spaces, 1 more engine space, and 1 more light space. Lastly, I unlock the ability to upgrade to a tier 4 hull, the final tier. Of course, I'll need to do a bit of resource collecting first. With the dog tags and mortar pieces in hand, I head back to the airman at the center of the Twisted Strand. First, I give him the dog tags, and, as a thank you, he gives me 3 research parts, 1 for each, and tells me that I've returned all of them that were missing. Happy to help. Next, I hand him the pieces of the mortar. He'll need some time to construct the thing, but he tells me that I may have noticed those strange contraptions around the lagoons. These are traps for the minesuckers, which we'll need to lure them into. I'm way ahead of you, Mr. One-Hand Army. I already tried luring one in earlier and nothing happened. However, the missing piece of the puzzle was the mortar. With this, the airmen can fire upon the trapped wretches and blow them to kingdom come. Like I said before, I love a simple plan. Even if my math is correct, I'm pretty sure I'm the bait in this plan. Oh, wait, never mind. Apparently there are 3 special kinds of bait which I need to construct first, made of different types of fish. I disembark to search for the fish I need. With an aberration in hand, well, not in hand, I don't want to grab that thing, more like in boat. With an aberration in boat, I stop by the altar to deposit it. This time, like the others, the fish disappears and is replaced by a fishing rod made of fleshy parts, which increases my chances of catching aberrations. I am also given an achievement, Servant of the Shrines. Apparently, that was the last shrine left to complete. Having collected all of the required fish, I returned to the airman to craft up the 3 special bait. All he asks is that I bring back proof once the things are dead. Back at the opening of the Strand, I approached the strange contraption and I left the bait in storage. I will never learn, I swear. It's like the 4th time. Hold on, let me go get it. Okay, now, I approach the strange contraption and load it with a special bait. Oh wow, that was pretty hardcore, not gonna lie. That thing got obliterated. Approaching its remains, I find a chunk of flesh amidst the rubble. A nice souvenir, I figure, for the airmen. Not to mention proof of death. 2 more to go. Returning to the airmen, I hand him each of the bits and pieces of the mine-suckers, all that remains of their horrid existence. With the last piece I give him, he plunges his knife into it. Surprisingly, from the carcass a glint of metal emerges. A necklace. The relic I have come to this place in search of. With almost a smile, the airman offers it to me, a prize for a job well done. A war successfully waged. With this war over, the airman appears melancholic. I ask him what is next for him. He isn't certain. He thought he would want to leave this place, but after all this time it has become a bit of a home to him. Instead, he decides to stay here a bit longer, to keep his brother's company. In the meantime, he offers to craft some bait for me, if I would find such a thing useful. Of course, I accept, and he gives me a free sample, unlocking a new ability, bait, which I can throw overboard to attract local species, creating my own fish schools at will for the cost of 1 bait. The more fish I bring him, the more bait the airman can make. With my quest here completed, I take my leave. I spent some time collecting resources for my next hull upgrade, but I don't quite have enough. Instead, I use my manifest ability to teleport to Blackstone Isle. Here, I forget to get the necklace out of my storage, do I even need to say it at this point? But I quickly grab it and speak with the collector. He recognizes the relic immediately, stating that it belongs in his collection as I am given an achievement, the Chains, for relinquishing it. Like the other times, I am granted a new power as a reward. This time it is Atrophy, the ability to instantly harvest an entire shoal of fish. 1 more relic remains to be collected, and the collector eagerly urges me on, regrettably to the final corner of the earth, the Devil's Spine. Not the most inviting sounding place, I'll be honest. He marks a location on my map for the relic. Before I leave, I ask the collector a curious question. I ask him if he is, well, human. He stares me down and replies, "Why yes, of course, as human as you are," before changing the subject. At that, I take my leave. Approaching a nearby shoal of fish, I use my Atrophy power, harvesting all of the fish and discovering a new aberration. This, it turns out, is the downside of this power. When I use it, I am almost guaranteed to find an aberration. However, as I will soon learn, this downside might not end up being such a bad thing. After all, I do have an encyclopedia to fill out. In the Marrows, I hastily dredge up the final wood and cloth that I need. In Greater Marrow, I stop by the dry dock to deposit these and to purchase my final hull upgrade, a Tier 4 hull. This unlocks an achievement, Hull Advanced. This expands my cargo spaces by an outstanding 15 spaces. However, there are still 4 more upgrades to collect upgrade materials for, and they require quite a few of them. While here, I decide to visit the shipwright and upgrade my light with an incandescent array, now that I have the space. Once purchased and installed, I am granted another achievement, Light Up the Night, for having a combined light strength of at least 3,000 lumens. Of course, while here in the Marrows, I also make a stop at the trader to offload my goods, as well as the painter, to hand in a flag I found since we last spoke. However, with these tasks completed, I make my way northeast, docking at the builder's house, with the Devil's Spine before me, a place where, I am told, lies an active volcano and ancient ruins. I rest in preparation for the next leg of my journey. In the direction of the Devil's Spine, I notice some islands close by Steel Point. I decide to take a quick sail around each of these, on the lookout for anything which seems important or valuable. Making my way around, I notice the usual, some materials and some items to dredge, but not much else. However, as my search drags into the night, I find myself with a little bit of unwelcome company. Luckily, my new banish power scares the creature away before he can do me any harm. The next day, I do manage to find something, or rather someone, on these islands. I approach a figure on a beach, a castaway, looking worse for wear, and ask him what happened. He informs me that he was washed up here about 2 weeks ago when a wave knocked him out of his ship. His crew obviously never located him. In desperate need of assistance, he asks me if I would take him to Little Marrow, back to society, something which I agree to do. He climbs aboard my ship and we sail away. In Little Marrow, he disembarks happy to be back in town after his misfortunes. Sadly, he tells me he doesn't have much to reward me with, but he does happen to have a small signet ring, which he gives me as a thank you. Then we go our separate ways, my pursuit resolved. Heading back northeast, I take a moment to review my map. I see why they call it the Devil's Spine. It appears this area consists of a few random groups of islands, one central island, where the X that the collector marked is located, and a series of other islands in the shape of a spine. I set my course towards the center island, catching sight of a new friend along the way. A nice bit of encouragement. This island, I note upon approach, seems covered in strange ruins and statues as the sky grows much more orange due to, I assume, the effects of the dormant volcano. Docking at the port here, I am met by a strange figure. This old fellow is, by name, a fanatic, and he assumes, incorrectly, that I have come to study under him. And though I try to dissuade him from this notion, he believes fate has destined our meeting, whether I intended it or not. I am here to undergo the rite of purification and be the fanatic's replacement. I tell him to go on. He asks me some vague spiritual questions, think personality quiz, and he tells me I have much to learn as I take on the role of the Herald of the Purge. The idols, one of which I can see behind him, stand barren and void despite their thirst for an eternal fire. My task is to retrieve the 3 fathomless flames from the spine itself to ignite their crucibles. These I will get from the Shrines of the Deep, which the fanatic marks on my map. That, he states, is all of the guidance I am going to receive, and the conversation abruptly ends. Before leaving, I take a moment to view the 3 statues. Yep, a few fathomless flames is exactly what this place is missing to tie the whole aesthetic together. Also, here are some stone columns which, upon examination, give me some insight into what I might encounter in this place. A swarm of small creatures, I read, the ravenous children. Together they summon her. I am warned, do not let them grip you. Burn them away. Oh boy, can't wait. Next, I read about the Unseeing Mother, who I'm willing to bet is the her the previous carving was referring to. She seems to be no good at all. Lastly, I learn of the existence of bubbling underwater vents, which act as the breath of salvation, burning away the impure. So, it looks like the volcano is on my side after all. Also, it looks like I can still talk to the fanatic, which is kind of funny actually. I thought we were done with how you walked away from that previous conversation all of a sudden. I ask him if he knows of any sunken relics nearby, and, to my surprise, he does, kind of. He pulls out from his robe a relic that once was sunken, but is no longer. An antique pocket watch, the last of the items I need for the collector. It will be mine, he tells me, once the ritual is completed. Checking my map, I take note of the spots the fanatic marked on it. And I also take note of the 2 sets of islands I've yet to explore, one to the northwest and one to the southeast. I decide to head to the latter first. On these islands I find lots of old ruined buildings, but not much else. However, I notice a space between 2 of the islands to dock. Upon doing so, I am met by a very strange figure. The old mayor of Little Marrow sits before me at the campfire. I'll be honest, I'm not sure this guy can even stand up anymore with how gaunt he looks. He asks me, hesitantly, whether I threw it back. I don't know what he means. The book, he shouts, but I tell him I think he has mistaken me for someone else. At this, he begins to doubt whether what he is seeing is reality. I ask him who he thinks I am. He doesn't answer me, but instead speaks to the fire, muttering about the man and his wife. They, I learn, dredged up that old book. But something cloaked in fog, followed it out. And then... It spoke to him. It said it was coming for his breath, and then darkness. Later, some of the crew washed up on shore, and him still clutching the book. The old mare tells me they pleaded with him to throw it back, to undo what had been done. "What book?" I ask. "Silver and crimson," he cries, "the one covered in her blood." But I don't understand what he means. The old mare can barely keep his composure as he begins to whisper. "The lighthouse keeper," he says. "She saw. She knows where it came from. Where it needs to go." Before I leave, I ask the old mare what the fog is, and he tells me that it cloaks that calamitous thing, the evil which can be felt. As I end my strange conversation with the old mare, I begin to put it together. The old mare was there when it happened. When the old sailor and his wife pulled the casket out of the ocean, he was there. The cold which affected the wife apparently did not only affect her, and from this coffin a book was retrieved, a book of silver and crimson. And this act heralded the arrival of some sort of evil, something of a nature beyond imagining. And this being, whatever it is, spoke to those that were there, causing a dreadful shipwreck. But the old sailor, I learned, did not return the book to the sea. He kept it for whatever reason. And I only know of one crimson book, the book which now is in the possession of the collector. How, I find myself wondering, did he come to possess it? What happened to the old sailor and his wife? And what does the collector need with these relics? What dark game have I unwittingly become a pawn in? With many things still to ponder, I focus my mind back on the task at hand, back to the Devil's Spine. Next, to clear my head, I make my way towards the other set of islands to the northwest. On these islands I find the fourth and final robed figure, this one in red. These, I learned earlier from the fanatic, were once pupils of his until they went wrong and he abandoned them to their hunger. And hunger this one does, as he requests from me a cusk eel. Right, add it to the list. There's nothing else to find here on these islands, but as I circle around one for one last check, I take out my spyglass and earn an achievement, prey-sighted, for spotting a fish of each category through my spyglass. Looks like I was just missing the volcanic type for that one. Now, finally, I make my way towards the Devil's Spine, with a little bit of encouragement for good measure. After being attacked by some fish, I dock at the location of some ancient ruins, a description which really describes this entire place. Here I find a cave which I enter and study. On the left wall of the cave are some paintings depicting the birth of a civilization, and a great beacon of light repelling a tentacled figure emerging from the sea, a lighthouse to keep away the evil. On the right wall the paintings show what became of this civilization. A volcanic eruption destroyed the lighthouse, and thus the evil was left to do what it wished. To the left are the steps to the ancient lighthouse. I climb the steps up onto it, but I meet an obstacle, the door at its base. There, I find a large socket carved into the face of the door, requiring an object to be placed inside of it. With nothing to put here for the present moment, I decide to return to my ship. The next day, as I set out, I learn how this place works. These little piranha-looking fish lie scattered around this place in small groups. Get too close and they follow you. To get rid of them, simply locate one of the many hot bubbling geysers and burn them away, or banish them. From my reading, I remember learning that these little suckers will slow down my ship if they catch me, and call their mother out for a feeding frenzy, and I'd rather not make her acquaintance to tell you the truth. No, thank you ma'am. You have been hit with the ugly stick, I am sorry to say. I make my way down to the black dot on the south side of the spine, picking up a message along the way. Here, thankfully, I find my best friend in the whole world, the traveling merchant. When I dock, I am granted an achievement, Safe Havens, for visiting every dock in the game. Apparently, this was my last one. Also, thank you for being here. This place just got a lot more bearable. She seems to agree with my assessment of this place, as she tells me with how inhospitable this area is, she's not even sure why she comes here. While I am here, I take advantage of the opportunity to deposit the upgrade materials I have been collecting into the slots of the few remaining upgrades I have left to purchase. Still a lot more to go. I also decide to use all of my stockpiled research parts to research the last of the 2 engines I have left. Upon researching the last one, I am given an achievement, Researcher Engines. In the shop, I purchase one of these new engines and equip it, increasing my speed dramatically. After taking a moment to set out my crab pots, I head out to look for the Shrines of the Deep. So, my task is already a third of the way done. I simply must visit the other 2 shrines, figure out what they request, and gather the other 2 fathomless flames. Before continuing, I take a second to read the message I picked up earlier and forgot about. This one is a bit cryptic and lacks a date. It appears to be from the wife to the old sailor. She, it seems, was scattered to the winds, but now feels almost whole again. All she requests is that he throw her back. Not really entirely sure what that means, to be honest. Nearby, I find some rocks blocking my path, which, with some explosives I stockpiled earlier, I am able to blast my way through. Fishing here, to my surprise, I pull up a coelacanth, the last of the rare fish. Back at the merchant's, I tell her about this final fish. Like the other times, she gives me 2 research parts as a reward, and my pursuit is completed. Making my way slowly through these perilous ruins, I locate a spot to dredge, and, doing so, I pull up something strange. A stone tablet with the number 1 on it. The description tells me that the trader at Little Marrow might know something about this. I'll keep that in the back of my mind for now. Continuing in my explorations, I find another similar place to dredge, which I am able to access with the help of some explosives. I pull up another stone tablet, this one with a strange rune on it. I guess that wasn't a 1 on the other one. I don't know, I don't read runes. Anymore, at least. Shortly thereafter, I locate the second shrine, tucked close by the mountainside. This one, it appears, requires 2 malformed fish, obviously 2 aberrations. Making my escape, I fail to evade the little grabbers, and I rapidly find myself over-encumbered with them as my movement slows to a crawl. Then she approaches. Thinking on my feet, or sea legs, I quickly use my banish power to ward them away. Just saved that one. Continuing in my exploration, I find a new flag covered in eyes. You know what? Fair enough. Also, I find a fenced-off area nearby which, after the use of even more explosives, I am able to access. Here, I locate the final shrine. This one requires 2 bottom dwellers, which, I recognize from the outlines, are a pale skate and a ghost shark. Shouldn't be too hard to get. In fact, I find a spot to fish up a ghost shark almost immediately, although I do almost get attacked again for my trouble. And then again while dredging up some scrap for upgrades. After resting at the middle island, I locate a pale skate nearby, and I head over to fish it up. No problem at all. Back at the shrine, I deposit the 2 bottom dwellers and receive the second fathomless flame. Before tackling the third and final shrine, I notice another glowing spot to dredge. Blowing through a wall, I approach the spot and dredge up yet another stone tablet, my 3rd so far. Heading back to the merchant's, I decide to check on my crab pots, and I find an aberration. In fact, I actually find 2 of them, exactly what I was looking for. Returning to the other shrine, I quickly deposit these 2 creatures inside, earning my 3rd and final fathomless flame, and an encrusted talisman which, when equipped, increases some of my stats. With these 3 flames collected, I return to the Fanatic's Island. One by one, I approach each statue and deposit the fathomless flames, which burn a cold blue in the crucibles which each statue holds in its outstretched arms. The Fanatic awaits. I approach him and inform him that my task has been completed. I follow him up to the stairs to the center of the temple where lies an altar filled with wood. He takes the pocket watch from his robe. Holding this, he climbs atop the pyre and begins to chant. I try to step back, but I am unable to budge. The flames begin to rise about him. I shout at him to stop this, but he only grows louder, and then, finally, the flames fully engulf him, transforming him into a cold mist which is swept away into the sea. All that remains in the chill, damp pyre is the pocket watch. I immediately take this object, the last of the relics, and return to the ruined mansion with Manifest, teleporting at once. Docking here, I approach the ruined mansion. I pause before crossing the threshold, deciding whether or not to conceal the relic I have come to deliver. I decide against it. I am greeted by the collector, who can tell already what I have brought him. I take the pocket watch out of my pocket and place it before him, resigned to my fate. He tells me it has been many decades since he last saw this object, though its sounds have grown no less unpleasant. Happily, he congratulates me on a job well done, as I am rewarded with an achievement, the moment. He tells me what comes next, what must be done with these 5 relics. He asks me if I know. I don't. He tells me we must make one final voyage, one he will join me for, and there's an air of finality to his words. One final voyage, he says. I know now that I am ready. The collector informs me that the relics are coming with us, and that we should wait for the cover of the night fog. Perhaps that way, the sea, and anything in it, will remain unaware of our intentions. We wait until night. The collector informs me our destination is to the west of Greater Marrow, where I once found my first relic. He marks it on my map, and we head out, the collector aboard my vessel, although he doesn't seem to take up space like the other people I have transported. As I sail on the dark seas towards the red light emanating from the ocean, I pause to wonder at my quest, wondering what I am doing and why I am doing it. Why have I struggled so long against this burden? What have I done, and what am I now about to do? As we approach the spot, the collector says simply, "This is where she was taken from us." She was there that night, the night the casket was pulled from the deep. The old mare had warned me. He had told me that something cloaked in fog had followed it out, an unspeakable evil. The same unspeakable evil that has persisted in the fog to this day. He was there that day. The collector was there that day. She was there that day. And, I suddenly realize, I was there that day as well, the day my wife fell ill. I was there when it was pulled from the deep. I was there when the chill which struck her heart struck mine as well. I was there when I took the crimson book, the book the collector stole from me, and I refused to return it to the deep. I stared into the abyss that day, and it stared back. I awoke the evil, and it cost me everything. She died in the wreck that followed, the one the old mare told me about. My old ship went down with her, with all of her possessions on board, the same possessions I have now dredged up from the sea. And now I know what I have come here to do. I have come to return these objects to the sea, and return my wife to me. For I am the old sailor, and it was because of me and my stubbornness that she died. The collector opens the accursed book and begins to read aloud, to release a lost one frozen in time, and he tosses over the pocket watch, untethered by chains in the deep. The necklace is sent overboard. Bind them to this world once more. He throws in her wedding ring. Open the door to the starry heavens. He inserts the key into the music box, and lay the weary world to rest. It is tossed in too, the key unturned. I return her possessions to the deep. I don't care about anything else. I must have her back. My light flickers and then goes out, but I hear the music. And then I see her, rising from the sea, and she is as beautiful as I can ever remember, glowing with light, radiant and resplendent. I would give everything for another moment with her. And now, I have. I'm given one final glimpse of Greater Marrow burning with fire, the flames heralding in the end of the world. I find solace in one thing and one thing only, the chance that there may be something else for me. Recalling one of the messages I found earlier, I remember her instructions. She told me what to do. I must throw her back instead. I returned to the oceans before I ever went with the collector to that horrible spot in the sea, and I set my mind upon finding something else, some other path to follow. Although, with so many loose threads still to tie up, I have a great many things to do before I set sail on my final voyage. The first of these threads is those stone tablets I discovered. These, I was told, I should take to the trader. In Little Marrow, I visit his shop and show him one of the 3 tablets I have collected. He informs me of something I had suspected. This tablet is part of a larger arrangement, and, reaching towards a high shelf, it appears that the trader has the last piece of this puzzle, acquired some years before. After I give him all 3 of the pieces that I have found, he arranges them together with the 4th in the shape of a square. New glyphs form on the combined tablet, casting an eerie light. The trader spends some time translating these glyphs before relaying them to me. When the sky mistakes the stars, and the air grows thick with night, the deep will open its scars, protect us, O guiding light. An ancient poem with one key hint, the guiding light. This can be only one thing, the lighthouse, but not the one in the Marrows. No, these tablets are referring to a lighthouse much more ancient than that. One I had visited before, only to find a missing, square-shaped object was required for entry. I take the fused tablet from the trader and place it in my ship. Before setting out, I take a moment to sell my collected valuables and hand the painter a new flag I discovered in my travels. Then, I sail back to the Devil's Spine. Back on the far side of the spine, I dock once more at the ancient ruins. Above me stands the ancient lighthouse. Once more I climb the stairs, but this time I have what I need. I place the fused tablet in the opening. Inside, I find a ruined staircase and, at its base, a couple of dusty but valuable objects. Most interesting is this, the Flame of the Sky, an incredibly powerful light for my ship. Once I get it installed, I will truly pierce through the night. My pursuit here is now resolved. Next, I take some time to farm up some nearby resources, making sure I stop by the traveling merchants to deposit them. I almost have everything I need to complete the last 4 upgrades to my ship. Just a few more resources to go. Back in the Marrows, I decide to take the time to dredge up the last of these that I need, returning to Greater Marrow to finish my upgrades. I purchase each of them, gaining 2 more rod spaces, 4 more cargo spaces, 2 more engine spaces, and 1 more space for lights. My ship is now, at last, fully upgraded. Next, I head to the shipwrights to reorganize my equipment. I fill out my engine slots, greatly increasing my speed. And I install the Flame of the Sky, buttressed on each side with even more lights, increasing my total lumens even more. Next, I take a look at my available research and decide to research the final rod I was missing. This done, I unlock my next achievement, Researcher Rods. I also make one more modification, installing the encrusted talisman I picked up earlier to increase both my fishing speed and chance to catch an aberration. I have a feeling that I'll be needing to catch lots of those guys very soon. Checking my pursuits tab, I realize that I might have neglected something. The 4 hooded figures' pursuits are all that remain to be done. I just never got around to doing them. I set out from the Marrows in search of the fish I need for these creepy fellows. Sailing out, I managed to snag another achievement, Cruel Heat, for keeping my haste burn meter dangerously high for 10 seconds straight. My next tasks are a bit rote, and it probably would have been better if I had spread them out like I was supposed to do, but too late for that, I guess. I catch a fish and bring it to one of the creepy guys. Catch a fish and return with it. Then he devours the last fish and gives me a book to read, resolving my pursuit. I repeat this process with the 3 remaining hooded figures. First, the purple one, then the blue one, and lastly, the red one. This time I am given an achievement, Providence, for finishing all of the side quests or pursuits in the game. I also managed to pick up a message I had missed before, the last one left to find. This one confirmed something I already knew. The relics were the possessions of my late wife, the pocket watch in this case being a gift from my late mother to her. A strange note altogether. Deciding to have a little fun, I set out northward to see what will happen if I just keep on sailing in one direction. My map has a barrier way out there on it, but I wonder exactly what will stop me once I'm out there. I move fast, but it is a long way to go as the moon rises in front of me, beckoning in the night. My fear rises. I turn back towards the lighthouse, the one bright spot of safety in this world. I had heard of this creature once before, the Leviathan which stalked the ship at the Marrows, way back near the beginning of my journey. It appears that this creature has a reason for wanting me to stay, or perhaps, straying too far from the evil dwelling in the depths, I lose its protection. Either way, I reload, ready to continue. Heading out to the sea, I use my atrophy power to see if there are any fish around, and, surprisingly, I am granted an achievement, Unsustainable Fishing, for using atrophy on a fishing spot a ways away. Also, I am starting to notice that every time, not just most of the time, but every time I use atrophy, I catch an aberration. This is an important development for sure. Since I had already sold one of these wrapped sharks before, I decide to discard this one so it doesn't spoil. To my surprise, I am gifted another achievement, Unwanted, for discarding 25 fish in total. Back in the Twisted Strand, I make a quick stop by the airman to have him grind some fish up into bait. These, I think, will come in handy. Sure enough, out on the seas, I decide to use some of this bait to attract some fish. This gives me yet another achievement, Mixed Results for attracting 3 different species of fish to a single spot. Now the achievements are rolling in. While completing all of these tasks, I make sure to purchase any available research parts from the traveling merchant as she restocks them. With my stockpiled research parts, I decide to finally research all of the different trawling nets that I had yet to do. This earns me another achievement, Researcher Nets. Taking a look through the encyclopedia for any fish that I missed, I notice that the only 2 I have left are open ocean fish, and both can be caught with a trawl net. I decide to purchase the best of the trawl nets and I equip it, setting out to catch these final fish. Into the open ocean I head, and it isn't long before I snag myself an anchovy. Look how small and adorable he is, tiny little guy. Soon thereafter I managed to get the other fish I was missing, the scarlet prawn, granting me the achievement for catching every known species of fish, Master Angler. A nearby whale makes a stop at the surface to congratulate me on my accomplishment. Next, while sailing the dark seas, I am attacked suddenly by a glowing creature. With reflexes as quick as molasses, I equip everything but my banish power, eventually equip the right thing, get hit, and then banish the creature after it already damaged me, earning an achievement, Banisher, for having banished 10 threats total. Not my finest moment, but pretty funny if I'm being honest. After this, while sailing around the lands of Dredge, I managed to trawl up my 150th fish. This earns me yet another achievement, Tangled in this web. That upgraded trawl net really works, I guess. Only a few more achievements to go. And the next one is a bit of a doozy. Just a moment ago I earned the achievement for collecting every fish in the game. That task wasn't too hard. However, there is another similar achievement in Dredge, one to collect every aberration in the game, something that is significantly more difficult. Luckily, I have a strategy. I remember what I previously discovered about the atrophy power. One of its quirks is that whenever this power is used to instantly harvest all fish from a single fishing spot, one of them always ends up being an aberration. Now I can use this quirk to my advantage. Instead of waiting for the small chance at an aberration naturally, I can force one to happen using this arcane power. Ethical concerns aside, the plan is perfect. I still have to get the correct aberration, and some fish species have 3 different aberrations you can catch, but with a bit of luck I shouldn't run into too much trouble. Just, a lot of gross fish. With the final aberration caught, I am granted the coveted achievement, Aberration Attractor. Now I just have to figure out how to clean all this slime and muck out of my cargo bay. These things are gross. Anyways, with all of these extra tasks completed, it is finally time to turn my attention back to the Collector and my ultimate mission. But first, I must make a stop back at Greater Marrow, for I have not forgotten what the old mare said. The lighthouse keeper saw it all, and she knows where it came from. I approach her lonely promontory and ask her about the silver and crimson book, the one I now know I refused to throw back all those years ago, leading to my wife's death. She shudders at the mention of it, asking me how I can ask her about it after all this time. I should know already. It must be returned. She looks at me with pity. She tells me I must move on, for her sake as well as mine. I must take control and be rid of that thing, once and for all. Back at Blackstone Isle, I know what I must do. Instead of telling him I am ready, I ask the Collector about that book. The book he stole from me. The book which brought upon the world this calamity. He mocks me at first, pulling some unrelated book off a shelf and grinning at me. But I tell him to stop messing around and tell me the truth. He pulls out the Book of the Deep, with its crimson and silver jacket. He dares me to ask for the truth. Where did you get it? Don't you remember? You were there. So was she. Who? My wife? What does that have to do with it? You wanted to forget. Begged me. This is what you asked for. Give me the book. You won't change a thing. The book is ours. What can you possibly hope to achieve? I strike out at him in frustration, anger, and confusion, and he breaks. You're pathetic, he tells me. Or rather, I tell myself. The Book of the Deep is already in my hands. Understand this plainly before you sink us into despair. I know how to bring her back. It's all right there on the pages, and now you've seen its power firsthand. We wield the power to release her from her slumber. We can undo everything. Undo what you did. Before he can say more, I leave, stumbling back to my boat and sailing away from Blackstone Isle. As I do, the reality begins to set in. I am not only the old sailor, deprived of his unfortunate wife. I am also the Collector, the lonely hermit of Blackstone Isle, a personality constructed to hide the horrible truth from myself for 20 years. And the puzzle pieces begin falling into place. The strange glance of recognition the lighthouse keeper gave me when I returned from my hermitage after disassociating from my past trauma. The fact the Collector told me he used to be a fisherman in a past life. The first time I saw the Collector through a porthole, but I wasn't looking through it at all. I was simply looking at the reflection. The fact that the Collector somehow stole the Book of the Deep from me, when in reality I had it the whole time, even from the very beginning, as I returned to start my life as a sailor once more. I have hidden this horrible truth from myself for too long. I am responsible for dredging up that horrible casket. I released that darkness upon this world, and now it is, at long last, clear to me what I must do. I must send it back. Returning to the lighthouse keeper, I tell her that I now have the book. She tells me I've had it the whole time. But no matter, I must make the most of this lucidity and act upon it. She asks if I remember where it happened, in the gloomy darkness behind the bay. There I must return. I tell her I am ready, and she warns me that we must wait until the night is thickest, as it was all those years ago. As night falls, the lighthouse keeper points her light to guide me. As she bids me farewell, she tells me to do what's right. For her. It is time to return the evil to the deep. I make my way solemnly to the spot the lighthouse has illuminated on the water, sailing on through the darkness. As I approach the horrible spot, I am given only one option. I try to throw it into the sea, but it struggles in my grasp, holding on somehow. I hold it high above my head, and I hear a horrible groan from both the book and the depths. Finally, I throw the Book of the Deep back into the ocean from whence it came. The light flickers out on my ship as I watch it sink down. As I let her go. My task complete, I am never given the chance to cause trouble once again. Leviathan makes sure of that. The world is safe from the deep. And now, my fellow seafarers, our time sailing the open oceans is at an end. All that there is to do is done. Every achievement has been collected, and every task has been completed, even those less appealing than the rest. Lands explored, oceans charted, strange individuals met, even stranger friends made along the way, and most importantly, a restless spirit finally laid to rest. I thank you sincerely for joining me on this adventure. If you would like to follow me on my next one, I would welcome the company. But until such a time as we may meet again, I bid you now a fond farewell. Can I put him in storage? No, it doesn't. I can see it right there.
No way that's real.
It's beautiful.
Is that the aberration?
No, best luck. This is not an aberration. This is what the real fish looks like. In real life, this is what the fish looks like. You can see through its face, and it's got eyeballs looking upwards. I mean, see?
Ew! Oh, that's disgusting! That's what sin did to the world.
Oh my word.